probably it would have been about 1953. I would have been aged about 6, and a part of my trek to school was to go down, which is called Edward Street, but we used to call it Jail Hill. And I can recall on one occasion going down Jail Hill, and what they used to have was trustees' prisoners would be out in the garden. They would grow their own vegetables. They were always cleaning up the street and tidying up around the jail. And one morning, as I went past the jail, there was this trustee prisoner. I don't know his name or anything about him, but he came over to the fence and he said to me, "When you come home tonight, kid," he said, "have a look under this lamppost." And that's all it was said. So I forgot about it. I went to school, and as I was coming home that night, I thought, I'll have a look. And I had a look, and sure enough, there was a stone placed underneath the lamppost, and under the stone was 6 shillings or 6 bob. And I kept it very quiet because at that stage, back in the 50s, 6 bob was something to crow about if you had a little bit of money like that. And so I didn't tell my parents, and to this day, I never ever saw that guy again. I don't know what the story with the 6 shillings was. I could assume that maybe he had stolen it, and he, second thoughts, thought, I don't want to be caught with this money, so I'll get rid of it. Or whether he thought, well, at some stage he'd sort of created a history against society with his crime or whatever, and it was a very meagre way of part of repaying to society what for the crime he committed. A lot of people had said to me, well, did he suggest anything to you? And there was none of that. It was just, kid, have a look under that post. The other story that I wanted to relate involved my late mother, Kitty Chapman. And it's a story that relates to, I believe, the day that Australia lost its innocence, and that was the Faraday kidnapping back in, I think it was 1972 or 73, I'm not sure. But what the police did was they transferred the search from the police station to the fire station because of the better radio. And for 14 hours, my mum, Kit, she helped organise the search, because my mum always used the radio when there was a fire, and she was able to relate messages from the headquarters out to the fire trucks and what have you. So she was very, very, very good at what she did on the radio. So she applied herself at that stage, and for 14 hours she helped organise this search, which, as we all know, ended up with the children being found down in the Cobor Ranges, and Mary Gibb, the school teacher at that time, had done a tremendous job in getting the children out of the van, which was placed in the ground, and she got the children out and then to a farmhouse, and then from then on the children were safe. But also at the time, Lindsay Thompson, who was the Minister for Education, he had travelled to Woodend, and that's where he was to give the ransom to the guys that had carried out the kidnapping, and hence that they were caught because it just didn't come off. But my mum was recommended for an award, and she received the British Empire Medal for that little community service that she carried out that day. Castlemaine Market, which I can recall my father and I going in there, and Dad used to buy chooks from out the back, and you know, that'd be taken home and killed. As in those days, there wasn't the Kentucky Fried and the access to quick food. And the other thing too was, as I said earlier on, being from a big family, it was a very economical method of buying and making your own meals at home, which is what my mother and father did. The other thing was, I can remember, but it would have been after the war, there was the hardware that used to be sold with war excess, like jackets, and you could buy trousers and you could buy boots and all that sort of stuff. There was also a guy down there that used to do little wooden toys, and I can remember, you know, my father purchased me a little wooden bus for Christmas from there. So the other things that Jean did mention was Paul's cycles and hardware, which was up possibly around where 213 Hair is, hairdressers in Barker Street. And back in the very early 60s, after I started work, I went there and purchased a black and white TV from Chickapaw, and it was lovely because Chicka installed it into my parents' place in Richards Road, Castlemaine. And he said to me at that time, he said, "Look, son, if you can pay that off within 12 months, he said, I won't charge the installation or for the aerial." In 1985, I purchased 10 acres of land out on the north side of Castlemaine and built a double-storey stone house, because when I was on that trip through Europe on the bike and England, I just loved English cottages. And so I took a photograph of a cottage that I really loved, and the house that I built out there this time is centred around what I envisaged an English cottage to look like, and it's quite a handsome little cottage. I suppose being an owner builder, you can do some incredible things, like I put a time capsule in the floor. And as I built the house, I cemented dollar coins into the wall. And I know there's $54 of value in dollar coins in the wall of the house. And another interesting thing too was when I was doing my meat inspection course in Melbourne, I should say in Bendigo, I used to go to Melbourne every Saturday morning to do practical classes. And I used to do it at the old Melbourne Abattoir in Smithfield Road. And at that time, never ever knowing that I'd have a bit of the old abattoir in my house, I bought Oregon beams from the old abattoir when they wrecked it, and those Oregon beams are now in my house, which is, you know, it's quite a thing to reflect back on, having those in a home and being in the place all those years ago. One of the biggest problems that I've had in relation to the house, because it's English, I wanted a lovely English cottage garden around it, but I'm finding it extremely difficult in times that we've got now, and that's drought, which is just desecrating what I've put in. And although I probably will have to rethink the garden, I'm still reluctant to pull out the English style garden. But it's sad. And I was mentioning earlier on about the two palm trees I've got out the front of the house. I found those in Harcourt, and I went and saw the guy, and I bought them, and my brother did all the work because he had the backhoe. We transplanted them into the front of my house. And I had a guy who was involved with the identification of trees during the transition between the highway going through Harcourt and where it was going to be located. And these two trees were actually found that one of them was classified and it was on the Victorian Register for Trees, historic trees. And the reason being, apparently, which I was given the documentation for, is that it's one of the tallest windmill palms in Victoria. The only one that ever comes near it, I was told, was one in the Botanical Gardens in Melbourne. But these trees, the two palms I have on either side of the front door of the house in the garden, and it just complements the house. And we also transplanted full-grown Dutch elms. There's 3 of those that we planted around the house as well, at the front of the house, and through the drought they've survived as well. So it's a nice picture when it's all green and looking lovely, but it's being practical, probably not.